Hello people, I'm back again with an update on this HoBao VS2 NITRO RCK. We had this note from HoBao that says that the servos can maximum take 6 volt, and it also says exceeding this limit will damage the servo. I have bought the 2S LiPo battery, so I cannot use this battery with these servos. If I wanted to use this battery with these servos, I had to have a voltage regulator, and maybe I could fit that in the receiver box. You can see here is the receiver box. So it's some free space here, so maybe you could fit a small voltage regulator inside here. But I didn't want to do that, then I had to buy a voltage regulator also. So what I've done, I've just ordered 2 new servos that can take a 2S LiPo battery directly. So I will change these 2 servos. If not, you could try to find a battery that fits 6 volt battery that fits inside this battery tray. This battery I got, and this fits all right inside here. It's have length 84 millimeters, width 28 millimeters, and the depth is about 70 millimeters. So you can try to find a battery around that specs, and 6 volt if you want to use the stock servos. I also said in the first video that there was nothing in the user manuals about failsafe. That was wrong. If you look at this small manual for the transmitter receiver, you will see here that it says here failsafe setup. So you can read here if you want to use this stock transmitter and receiver, and you should check that it works. So when you have the battery inside, you can just turn it on, both the power here and on the transmitter. And you can just try to give some throttle, and then if you unplug the battery from this transmitter, the receiver should set the brake to maximum, so you will not have a runaway. Also, as you can see, I've removed the air filter, so you can take a look inside the carb. What I did find was that the carb was closed much more than it says. In the specs here, it says that the idle gap should be 1 millimeter. If you remove the air filter and remove this, I think they call it a venturi, and it says it's 7, so I guess this is 7 millimeter opening venturi. But if you look inside this carb here, this is the idle gap. You can see it down there, the small opening here on the right side. Can you see it? This is the idle gap, and that was much more closed. And you should measure the idle gap when the venturi is out like now. So I have just found a needle, and I measure this to be very near 1 millimeter diameter. So with this needle I can measure that the idle gap is about 1 millimeter. You just open the throttle a bit, and you put this inside and see if the opening is about 1 millimeter, like this. It's a bit smaller than 1 millimeter now, but I believe it's okay as it is. Another thing is that the needles, high-speed needle and the idle gap screw was not set up correctly from the factory. If you should follow what they suggest here from factory defaults. So I have adjusted the high-speed needle. It says that it should be let's see, top and high speed, it should be 2.5 turns out. So you just turn the high speed needle all the way in and you take 2.5 turn out. The mid speed needle here should be flush, that looks okay. And the idle gap screw you set up so you have this 1 millimeter opening idle gap here. And for the low speed needle, they say bottom and low speed factory default is a half turn out from flush, and that looks all right. So I just had to turn a bit on the idle gap here and a high speed needle. Later, when I break in this engine and tune it, I may use another of these needles. Maybe I can find one that is around 0.7 millimeters, so I can close the idle gap a bit. But we have to see how the engine behaves. I also dropped a few drop of engine after run oil, both here where the glow plug sits and also inside the carb here, just to have some oil in the engine. I'm not sure how well it's oiled and how long this car have been on storage. Also this battery tray here, I think it's a bit small, but I could fit this battery, and I don't like this battery tray cover because it's you have to screw it with two screws to hold it tight, and when you screw down the screws and loose them again and do that many times, maybe the threading here in the plastic will wear out, so it could be hard to lock the cover after some time. So it would be more nice if they could just have a quick release like they have on the receiver box. You have this clip that you just put in like this, but the receiver box lid is not well sealed, so if you drive in water or wet conditions, I believe you would get water inside here. So maybe not dry in the most wet conditions. Yes, and then we have the springs. I measured the diameter of the stock springs. They are 1.5 millimeter, and I bought these options part springs and I measured them, and them are 1.6 millimeter diameter. So I believe these option springs is a bit stiffer, so I'm gonna change out the stock springs to these springs. But you could also just turn down a bit here, screw down, that would stiffen the setup here and raise the car a bit. And you could also just change the mount here, one position down, that would also stiffen this up and raise the car a bit. Like I said, I'm not going to use this for serious racing. I'm just a basher, and I do some basher racing or just bashing. So I want it to sit, the car to sit a bit higher, not much, but a bit higher. And that, I guess, was all I had to say, I believe. Yes. So I will come back later again when I have checked the electronics more. I'm gonna test how this default setup is with this receiver and this transmitter, and seeing the failsafe is set up correctly. But later I'm gonna change the receiver and transmitter and also the servos now, so I can use the 2S LiPo battery directly here without the voltage converter, what they call it. So I'll be back for more later one day. Goodbye.